Oh, oh, where were we? What were we talking about? Oh, I remember. The last time we spoke, it was about AlphaGo and how strong it was. And let's see, we talked about the societal impacts of deep learning, and we talked about how cool it would be to have a version of AlphaGo on our own desktops. Well, a bit of time has passed, and you know, things have changed, at least in my life. For example, I moved to a new city. I'm now living in Portland, Oregon. I've got a new laptop that hopefully won't be nearly as glitchy as the old one. It was getting really tired and frustrating. And, well, we do have AlphaGo for the computer. Well, if not AlphaGo, at least bots that are trained by AlphaGo using the AlphaGo Zero approach. And they're really strong and really cool. So I've decided I'm going to come back and do a few more videos and let's see how it goes. But some of these videos I might talk about strengths and weaknesses of using these bots, and opine a little bit. And maybe in some others I'll play some games, whether they're pro games or bot games or pro versus bot games, because I think they're really cool. But I think for the most part, I'll probably stick to doing old-fashioned Brady's Blunders. The ones in which I show you the mistakes in my games and analyze them in the hopes that you won't make the same mistakes in your games. Only this time, I'm going to use Leela Zero or one of the other bots as the master. And in the interest of brevity, too late, let's get into the first one of these. And this is a game I played relatively recently. And it's a modern style opening with early 3-3 invasions and tanukis and double approaches all over the place. And I'm black. And my opponent has just double approached. I'd say at this moment the game is pretty even. And I attached, and he invaded the corner. So he took the corner and I took the outside, a fair exchange. But then he descended, and this is a move I thought was poor. And the reason is it encourages me to play this, which damages the white corner. And this is special. So white's descent here is playable, but it's a special purpose move. And basically, it's when white's turn is viable. So if white had a stone around here or here, then he'd be able to turn with this stone. Maybe he'd eventually be able to attack this or use that group to attack something else. But in this instance, there's no stone there. So I think it was not a great move. And I started to feel a little more confident in the game. And let's see. I actually thought at this point that white might answer here or here because he damaged his corner. But he didn't. He tanukied and he instead pincered me in the lower left. And I looked at this and said, all right, that's big, but he can't kill me in a single move, and so it doesn't seem hugely urgent. And I decided to go back and press against this group over here. I was like, sure, this is Sente, and there's nothing that feels so good as getting a big extension along the top in Sente, because he has to answer, right? I was expecting to play this or this, and because he's weak in his corner, he just has to answer. I mean, come on. But the thing is, he didn't. And instead, he played this move here. And I looked at that, and I was like, oh, I really want to play at the top. I want to punish him for his mistake. But I realized that my not answering this move would be a mistake. Because if I play at the top and white turns, this is Sente against the corner. I can't ignore this. But if I just extend once and he extends, then if he turns, it's not Sente against my corner. So I did that. I extended, and I fully expected him to extend too. And he should have done, but he didn't. And instead he played here. So there's a series of small mistakes that happen at this point. I should have answered this just normally. And I didn't, because instead I wanted to play to the outside. Remember, I talked about the Aji. If he gets stones around here, the Aji of his turning with this stone, and I didn't want to allow it. So I played here. White Hanade, I double Hanade. White should have cut at this point. It's free and useful, but didn't. I should have connected at this point. I didn't. White extended again, and I came to a pause. And I looked at my shape and I thought, okay, it is thin. It really is. This corner over here is quite thin, lots of cutting points, but I didn't think I could die. And I decided, all right, if I can't die, then perhaps it's the right time to tanuki. And I played over here. Now, the problem for white is white can't block like this because I can come out and capture the cutting stone. So that's no good. And so therefore, white really has no choice but to answer submissively and let me pull back. And this feels great. Like, this is a stone I would play snapping it on the board. Unfortunately, it's online, so you can't snap a stone on the board. That would be a good feature, you server designers. It felt really good. And it felt really good for not just because it's points along the top that used to be whites that are now blacks. Although that's fine. It's that white can't live in the corner. With this stone here and this stone here, there's not enough room for white to make two eyes, at least uncontested. So this is a move that's not just taking points, but it's really attacking. So I felt good about it. And when white turned here, this was a small mistake because even with this move, white can't make two eyes in the corner. So I played this way, which it moves up to the third line and starts to enclose the corner. And I'm feeling like this is a series of small mistakes by white, and I'm feeling good. So then white played here, and this is our first game problem. And so right now I'm going to ask you where you would play if you were black. Now there's 3 of these problems in this video. And I don't know that I'll say again, if you feel like pausing and thinking about it for a while, please do so. I may not say that again, but for all these problems, do that. Because these are all problems that either I or my opponent did take time to consider. So again, if you were black, where would you play now? All right, I already told you that I had, a little bit of steam coming out of my ears and I was feeling confident, and how could he tanuki, and then how could he tanuki again, and he can't make two eyes. So I felt very confident about my next move, and here he is trying to make two eyes, and I said, no, you may not have two eyes. And I thought it was the best move I could find, and we actually had a very strong player review the game, and he said nothing about this move. So I think that's what they would have played as well. But now, let's ask Leela Zero what it thinks. I thought about doing silly transitions, going bloop, boodaloop, boodaloop, but I'm going to switch back and forwards between Leela and the demo board enough times that it's not practical. And I'm using new software. Maybe I'll learn how to use it and do clever transitions, but today is not that day. All right, let's let Leela look at this. And it's really interesting. It's hardly even considering the move in the corner. It's looked at it and it says, okay, yeah, black can play this and win 70%. It's still a good game for black. But it's really giving all its consideration to this move on the outside. And if we look at that continuation, and I'm going to pause it again, I've got it on the other board. So what happens if instead of black going for the kill, what happens if black plays on the outside? Well, according to Leela Zero, white will play here and here, and then black takes Sente to come down to the bottom. So why is this a good continuation versus killing the corner? All right, a couple thoughts on that. Number one, as we'll see, my invading the corner doesn't necessarily mean it's dead. Number two, with this approach, black is developing the right side and definitely looks to get some points, so that's a net positive. Number three, black gets Sente to play on the bottom to make sure white can't get a huge territory along the bottom. That's pretty big too. And then number four, and perhaps most interesting, let's look at the status in the upper right. This white group still isn't alive. Matter of fact, it's a little weaker now than it was when I asked the question, because this black group is a little bit stronger. If white wants to go ahead and live, then that's great. Black gets to make another move somewhere else on the board and really gains a huge advantage in the game. But we didn't play this variation. Instead, we played something a little more complicated. And I'm going to back up. And I see here that I actually missed a move. So it's really inconsequential to the video. But white exchanged this here and then this. So, and that's when I invaded. So this move, this exchange isn't good for white. It doesn't make two eyes. It really doesn't affect the video in any way. So I'll just carry on. All right. And when I invaded, then it got a little complicated and white turned here. And at this point, if I let white connect underneath, white's going to live easily. So I had to come back and cut. And this would have been a better move than what I played, less space. But instead I played this. And it still works. It's just not quite as good. White turned up, and I netted, and I netted. White played here, and I connected. White pushed out. I pushed out. White covered me. I threatened to cut. White connected, and I lived in the corner. So basically, the right-hand side, that if I'd chosen the other approach could have been mine, now has white stones all throughout it. And I guess that's fine if I killed them, but that's far from a sure thing. So the next question is, if you were white, where would you play next? And I've put up 3 markers, A, B, and C, one of which is what the player actually played, the second of which is what the strong player recommended, the teacher, and then the third is what Lila 0 recommends. All right. The player played here, and when the teacher reviewed the game, said, no, you really can't play this move. And the reason is this. You have to recognize at white that right now you're losing. Black has taken the lead, and what you need to do is create complications. And to play a slow and thick move like this, you just don't have time for it. So what you did definitely gained you some safety for that group, but wouldn't it be more interesting, and here's the teacher's move, to do an asking move? And the reason behind this is, let's say that black doesn't want to let white connect. Then black can play here. And now if white moves out, either right now or later, this stone is useful to this stone moving out and this white group moving out. And that makes sense. That's really cool. So do the asking move first. The teacher also said, all right, but that's not the only choice. If black is more concerned about the corner, then black might cover this way, in which case you'll get a variation something like this, in which black secures the corner and white eats the 5 stones for 12 points. But of course, if you've eaten those 5 stones, you'd never place a stone here, right? Which is where the player played. So that's the reason why you want to play the asking move first. I thought that was really good, really useful. And let's see what Lila 0 thinks about these moves. I've let Lila 0 play this out 80 and 100,000 times in preparing for this video, and it never once looks at my opponent's move. So it doesn't particularly like it. But if you'll notice, it does do a few playouts of the strong player's move, or the teacher's move. And if we play it, it does a variation very much like what the strong player said. You see that it sacrifices the 5 stones and controls the outside and kills the corner. But also notice, it thinks at this point, black has over a 90% chance of winning. If I move that cursor a little bit. So Lila 0 considers the teacher's move, but also says, actually, this leads to a really good black victory. So the move that Lila prefers is this one here. And moving out with the white group in the corner. Oh, wait, I thought I killed that white group. I guess not. And it still only gives white a 17% chance to win, but you can see that, I mean, it comes up with different variations every time you touch it as it thinks more. It keeps finding better solutions for one side or the other, but I just froze here. You can see that white is able to get their head out with move 28 here. Black also got out to safety, and the white group at number 22 has also protected. So basically you've got 3 running groups. It's not good for white, but white's out and has a chance. I think white moving out makes a lot of sense from the human perspective as well. And the reasoning is something like this. White may not know that according to the strongest bots in the world that they're behind 83% to 17%, but they should feel like they're behind. They should feel like they're losing. And part of that's counting points and part of that's looking at strengths and weaknesses, but they should feel behind. And they have the ability by coming out of starting a fight. And the reason it's a fight is this black group only has one eye. So when white moves out, it's not just running, it's actually competing with that black group. And when you start a fight like this, sure, a bot with near perfect reading, demigod level, if you will, can say, all right, 83.5%, black is going to come out better from this. But when you're playing a human, an amateur like yourself, then it's not like that at all. The sequence I just showed had 28 consecutive moves so 14 moves for either player. What are the odds that either you or your opponent are going to play 14 perfect moves in a row? And who's more likely to screw up first? Because if it's you, fine. You were behind already in this game. You're just giving it a good try. But if your opponent makes the big mistake, and let's say black lets white live easily with 2 eyes, and maybe white lives in Sente, then maybe that throws the game back to 50-50. But let's say that in this fight, black makes a mistake and black dies, then maybe it throws the game 90% or 98% into white's favor. So this is white saying to black, all right, you're beating me. I admit you're beating me. But why don't we make it a coin toss? Let's start a fight. And I mean, a coin toss is a lot better than a sure march to defeat, right? And that's why I think coming out makes sense for humans, not just for deity level bots. Of course, white didn't play here. White played here. So this is the final game problem. If you were black, where would you play now? Right. I played B. And my reasoning was this. I'm pretty sure the upper right corner's deadish. And I'm rich, right? I'm winning this game. So I don't want to pick fights. And I figured that if I play here, it's a good extension from this enclosure in the upper right. And if I march out towards the center, then I've got more than half the board. The game is pretty easy. Plus, this stone threatens to connect with this other stone. And this other stone has lots of flexibility. So I figure all I have to do, don't be greedy, don't screw up, and you'll just win. And the teacher, when they looked at this move, said, all right, that makes sense. I can't argue with that logic, but my logic's a little different. And I would play over here. And his reasoning was similar, like that upper right corner is deadish, but black's already got a lot of cash. And black doesn't need any more cash. It's got a lot. So all black needs to do is to make sure that white can't get lots of cash. And thus, it's a nice wide open area. Just jump into it. Black will be fine, and white won't get enough points, and it's an easy win for black. Let's see what Lila Zero thinks of our moves. Wow, Lila Zero doesn't even think about my move or the strong player's move, and instead is giving all of its attention to sealing in the corner. And again, I guess because the other variation, white could move out, it makes it worthwhile for black to seal white in. And matter of fact, if you look, white goes ahead and tries to live locally, but black kills, and then white just starts playing elsewhere. And so I guess this move works. Interesting with a 93% win probability as well. Cool. I wonder what it thinks of my move. 45, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52. Wow. All right. So this move that I felt natural and said I'm not going to pick any fights, changed from my having a 93% win rate to now having only a 45% win rate. The 55 that's there is the win rate for white. So that's an amazing, 47% shift with not a misread, not a bad liberty count or a self-atari, but just a simple direction of play error. That's just huge. What does it think is going to happen? Okay, this is quite interesting. Every time I do this, it shows me a different variation. But in this one, white easily gets out and encircles the black group. At least from a human perspective, this is probably now an even game. So that's a far cry from a 93% black win. I wonder what it thinks of the strong players move. $42, $46, $47, $48, $49, $50. Okay, so it likes it a few percentage more than it liked my move. But again, Leela Zero thinks that this is clearly the wrong direction of play. And again, it likes coming out. And clearly does so relatively easily. So I think this is really interesting. I was in control of the game, and then with this one move, suddenly it can all fall apart. And if white moves out here and fights, then it changes from a 93% win to a 45% chance of winning for me. But what's weird is when I looked at this move just 2 moves ago, it was only like an 18% win rate for white, right? So what's different? What's different is this white move right here. You know, the one that I said was bad and a mistake. And it turns out it's only bad and a mistake if black seals the deal. If black goes ahead and puts the second nail in the lid of the coffin of white. If black tanukis, as I did, now this move shines because this group is no longer weak. It's no longer a target. Instead, it's thickness. And white can drive this weak black group against the thickness. And that one stone totally changes the balance of the game. Again, I think that's pretty neat. So I named this video The Drowned God because of the famous phrase of the Ironborn from Game of Thrones fame. Dum dum da da dum dum da da dum dum. Anyway, that what they say is what is dead may never die. And that really reminds me of the strength of Leela Zero and these other bots. And you put them in a situation where you think it's all over, they're dead, and they can find a way to live. And even if they can't find a way to live, they can find a way to make that corpse useful. And plus they can invade in places that no human can. But in this case, and in variations of this move here, whether it's white getting it or black getting it, I think it's actually really instructive for humans. It doesn't take demigod level reading. And again, the idea is very simple in this game especially. If you're ahead, seek simplicity. Try to resolve the game. If you're behind, seek complexity. Try to make it more complicated. And if you can convert an 87% loss into a 50% win by starting a fight, do it. It's a good idea. So having rewound, again, I think that's the big lesson. And actually, at this point in the game, I'm ahead. So I could seek complexity by invading, or I could seek simplicity by playing on the other side, controlling the right side, and getting Sente to address the bottom. Same lesson here again. White had the opportunity to embrace complexity, move out and start a fight, and turn what could be an 87%, 90% loss into a 50-50 coin toss. Probably should have done it. And then the same thing here. I had the opportunity to seal the deal with C and embrace simplicity, and I failed to do that. So there you go. Oh, I have one more question to ask Leela. In this situation, right when black pincers, where should white play? It seems to me the whole game kept turning on that upper right corner, didn't it? And Leela likes my opponent's move, I think because it's Sente, and it also likes playing first in the upper left-hand corner, which makes sense. But the 2 moves I discussed earlier, look at this, they're both viable too. And that leads to my final point. Just because Lizzie and Leela Zero say something is possible doesn't mean it's wise. Remember, a lot of the variations that it finds require superhuman reading. And sometimes, and this is just 2 percentage points worse, 3 percentage points worse than the best move, according to Lula Zero. But sometimes it's best to play the simpler move that you fully understand instead of the more complex move that, demigods and bots can understand. And if I face this situation again in my game, I would play this move here as white. Right, that's about all I have to say today. Look, it's my first video in a long time. I've got new hardware. I've got new software. I'm rusty as hell. So I really look forward to the comments. Please feel free to leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, like it. And if you're not a subscriber, I'd love to have you. See you next time.